Hey, Marvina.
Hey Renee, how are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing well. I am doing well. Can't complain.
Awesome. Awesome. Our last session, you were
Mhm.
having some difficulties with allergies. They still getting you a little bit?
Yeah, I'm hoping, they come and go.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping I've been pretty good. And so I'm hoping I'm over the hump. This weather is just again, it's sunny one day, it rains the other. And
Yeah.
so I think that when the sun comes out, like all these spores or whatever they
Yeah.
are, they, come out and and then of course you hate, the coughing and because everybody's looking at you like, did you have on a mask, ma'am?
Yeah.
Allergies, they're like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But thank you for asking. Yes, I'm feeling better.
Oh, good, good. So, yeah, so we welcome everybody to the episode. We thank you for tuning in. If you're a first time visitor, we hope you enjoy and will come back. And for those who you know are with us every episode, we thank you for that too. So,
Yes, thank you.
yeah, yeah. So, today's episode,
Mhm.
episode 13, is titled "If You Say So."
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the last episode, this was kind of a follow-up to our last episode where we talked about don't stop at forgiveness. We talked about the resurrection and God's provision of forgiveness to us, and then of course walking in victory. And
Yes.
so you and I had talked a little bit more about forgiveness,
Mhm.
and we thought we'd address this one about forgiving others, because the first episode talked about the forgiveness we enjoy,
Mhm.
and
And
we
walking
can
in that victory of, yeah,
exactly.
in this
Uh, but sometimes there's a need to forgive others, and so we thought
right.
we'd kind of
Mhm.
address that a little bit. Um, Forgiveness is a big topic,
Mhm.
and so by no means do we think that we're going to offer any kind of I don't know, real structured process on how that happens, how you forgive
Mhm.
others. But we want to just talk a little bit about our experiences with forgiveness and what we believe God is saying about forgiveness.
Yes.
So
Yep.
um, I looked up Ephesians 4:32. Kind of start with that. This is the New King James Version.
Okay.
And that scripture instructs us to be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ forgave you.
Mhm.
And when I read that scripture, I recognize that forgiveness is not a suggestion, right? It,
Right, but how
it,
often do we take it as one, right?
right, right,
I
exactly,
think it's optional.
right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
But the forgiveness becomes a responsibility. And especially when you read it in context with that verse, it
Mhm.
says, even as God through Jesus' sacrifice forgave you. So if we're reading it in context with that verse,
Mhm.
how in the world do we think we're above if God was willing to give his son and Jesus was willing to give his life? Where do we think we're above all that to make a decision on whether or not we forgive,
Right.
right?
And nowhere did I read nor did I hear as you were reading that he gave us certain scenarios,
Mhm.
or um options.
Right,
Mhm.
right, exactly. So if we can't offer forgiveness to others, it makes me question, makes me wonder
Mhm.
if we really understand the gift or the significance of the forgiveness that God has offered us,
Right,
right?
right.
So, and like you said, Jesus didn't give a but option or a but exception
Mhm.
with forgiveness. It wasn't, I forgive them, but. I
Right.
hope they get what's coming to them.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of times I have thought that, but
Me too.
yeah. Or I forgive you, but I want you to know how much you hurt me,
Right.
or I forgive them, but let me tell you what they did,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. And we do understand that it's not um something that you take lightly. Like you can't there is there takes a lot of strength
Mhm,
to forgive some things that people have done to us, or situations that we have been in. But again, it's not an option, right? And the only way we can do it is through the strength of Christ. That's the only way we can do it,
mhm,
because all those buts come up.
mhm.
I mean, again, I'm thinking about myself here, and how sometimes I'm like, I'm justified. I feel justified
Mhm,
in not forgiving, or I don't think I think what we tell ourselves is, it's kind of like that. I forgive, but I don't forget.
mhm,
A lot of times when we say that, or we think that, it's so loaded. Anytime I hear that, it just seems very loaded to me, because it sounds to me like what we're saying is, I'm really not going to forgive you. Like, I'm going to act like I'm going to forgive you because I know that's the thing to do. I need to move on, but you're still holding on. And of course, God gave us the brains we have and the memory we have, and we do remember and things like that. But a lot of times, the way we remember it, it still affects us. If it's still affecting you, you haven't forgiven,
right, right,
you know?
right.
And the only way you can do that is to give it to God. That's where you can only do it in God's power.
Right.
Because I know, I can imagine, and I know that there's some things that have been, they could have, to different people, atrocious things
Mhm,
could have
mhm.
been done. And, in no way, shape, or form are we condoning that, or saying, you should just be able to, turn the other cheek and forgive whatever is going on. But through the power of Christ, he gives us the ability to be able to not allow those things to affect us, and for us not to hold on to it,
Mhm.
and pay somebody back,
Right, right.
you
Yeah,
know, or want to see something happen to them again.
yeah,
Not that
exactly.
many times, so I am
Yeah,
very guilty of that. But, and it's the human side, right? But
right,
that's why we have to lean on God, and God has to, but we have to be open
right,
for God to come in, and for him to give us the power to be able to forgive and move forward.
right, right. And we can't, like you say, we can't hold on to the option of, I forgive, but Lord, if you would just do this, if you
Yes,
could show them that, you can't leave that door open
right,
to want to help him
right.
address that person, right?
Mhm.
Right. And I think sometimes the term, my mom is a big one to use, forgive and forget.
Okay.
And I think unfortunately that
Mm.
becomes a combo plate.
Yes.
So
Yes,
people think, oh, I could forgive him, but I'm never going to forget. So
yes,
they think they have to, it's either all or nothing.
right.
So, and I'm of the mindset like you, that sometimes, like, we grew up in a very dysfunctional family where there
Mhm.
was some abuse, and I'm not going to forget that
Mhm.
um, made me who I am today. I mean, it's
Mhm.
there are memories, there are things, and uh wounds, scars, whatever you want to call them, that I
Mhm.
live with, but they
Mhm.
don't dictate how I live, if
Yes.
that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
So I think this whole thing of forgive and forget, I think, can be a trap for people, because sometimes uh, forgetting is not a realistic element,
Right.
but the
Right.
forgiveness
Mhm.
is the very thing that's going to set us free from the lingering hurt, the
Mhm.
anger, the bitterness, the anguish, and the torment that those wounds and their scars have inflicted over the years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think just thinking about relationships, like, you know, people that are close to me, or, that I deal with on pretty much a daily basis, or, pretty consistently.
Hmm.
A lot of times we keep people in that, we say we forgive them, but we actually keep them in this certain spot because we continue to bring up that thing, or,
Hmm.
or the first opportunity we get is, oh yeah, well, I remember when this happened. Oh, well, that happened to you because of this. Again, that's a sign that you haven't let it go, and
Right.
you haven't truly forgiven, because when you have, the sting of it is taken away. I
Hmm.
guess that's what I'm trying to say. And sometimes when we say those things, you can hear the sting behind it,
Right. Right.
Um, and so, yeah, we probably need to go back to our closet and, ask God to help us to work on that thing,
Yeah.
because it's still dictating, it still has a hold on us, you
Right.
know. And
Right.
I think, of course, we always hear, forgiveness is not for the other person, it's for us. And, in that, in part, is saying, because it has a hold on you, you know what I'm saying? It's affecting the way you think, the way you move through life, the things your thought process, it affects all of that.
Hmm.
And so, um, you know, again, talking to myself here, but
Yeah. And I think sometimes there's that expectation that if you forgive, okay, I forgive that person, Lord,
uh-huh.
that the Lord is supposed to immediately work on that person,
Right.
you know? So, well, I don't see any change in them. Well, it doesn't matter
Right.
if you see change in them.
Right.
What matters is, what does he ask you to do? And we think that, well, why does that person get away with it? You don't know how God's dealing with that person. You
Right.
don't know if he's dealing with them and they're ignoring him,
Right.
but that's not our concern.
Right.
The
Right.
concern is, okay, I've got to bring liberty to my spirit. And like you say, it's like a weight when you're unforgiving.
Mhm.
Um, and I think sometimes we can get into a situation where it's we can call it anything but unforgiveness.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
oh, I'm just a little bit upset, or I'm just a little, I just don't like them. It's like, well, you need to look at it a little bit further. What is that root there? Is it unforgiveness?
Right.
And
Right.
and deal with that.
And
Um,
it's not an easy thing to do. It's
no.
not, because it's not. I think about, I love the stories in the Old Testament, and I often think about, one of my favorite stories is the story of David.
Mhm.
And I always like think about like how Saul was with David.
Mhm.
It's a lot of forgiveness.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
he didn't do anything, right? David was like, I'm here to serve you.
Yeah.
I'm here to make you look good. And because of that jealous spirit,
You tried to kill
Saul,
me. You tried to kill me when I was playing the harp.
and then that and I always that story always stuck out to me, because I'm like, God, how could, I remember the first time I read the story, and and it talked about how Saul was killed
Mhm.
and how David was upset at his it someone in his army who
Mhm.
said basically, I took Saul out of his misery.
Mhm.
I remember reading that story and I was like, that I mean, that is the for real power of God.
Yeah.
Because you chased me down. I had to leave my hometown. I had to leave my home. I had to leave everything
Yeah.
because just because you didn't like me, I didn't do anything. You know what I'm saying? And so, but it also showed me how we have to continually work
Mhm.
to forgive.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we know God is a just God. So that has to give us solace in God will handle the other person. God
Mhm.
tells us vengeance is mine. He
Right.
tells us, um, you know, um, uh, us forgiving or being kind to our enemy is like heaping hot coals on their head. So God tells us he'll handle it, but it's
Right.
just hard. It's just hard because I just want to see it a little bit
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And you look at the story of David that you were just talking about, and you look at the comparison between the two lives,
Mhm.
right? David was able to forgive many, many times, had
Mhm.
many times opportunities to kill Saul,
Yes.
didn't do it because he respected that that was God's
Right.
servant at the time. And
Right.
so, but you see how God blessed David as he continued in that vein of forgiveness. And you look
Correct.
at Saul, and jealousy, yes, was definitely a part of this.
Right.
But to me, there was a little that went along with unforgiveness. You're not going to let David off the hook for whatever you
Right.
thought.
Right.
And look at the torment that
His whole life, the
his
rest
whole
of his
life,
life.
his whole
Exactly.
life,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so for unforgiveness can just certainly be a weight
Mhm.
that we carry, and it's not necessary. And again, as we said at the beginning, we don't have, we're not pretending that all you do is forgive and there you
Right.
go. It's a process, but you
Right.
have to trust that the Lord, because He's asked you to forgive, ask us to forgive one another. You have to trust that if we do that, that it's going to release our spirit from that heaviness.
Right.
And there's a story in Luke 5, 1 through 5, and this is the
Mhm.
New Living Translation that I'll be speaking from.
Okay.
And it's not specific to forgiveness,
Mhm.
but when we were talking about this topic, it really struck me as I was reading this
Mhm.
that this could apply to forgiveness. And it was Jesus was preaching on the shore of the Sea of Galilee,
Mhm.
and a great crowd gathered like normal, and was pressing in on him. So he
Mhm.
saw two empty boats, and he saw the fishermen not far away. They were cleaning their nets. And
Mhm.
so he actually went and sat in one of the boats, and he called Simon over, one of the owners of the boats, and he says, "Hey, can you just push me out a little bit?"
Mhm.
And so he pushed him out away from the shore a little bit so that Jesus could teach and have a little bit of, a little space bubble around
Uh-huh.
him without
Uh-huh.
people pushing in. Um, and so when he finished teaching, it says that he came back to shore, and he
Mhm.
said to Simon, "Now go out where it's deeper and let down your nets." Right.
Mhm.
And Simon's reply was, "Master, we worked hard all last night and didn't catch a thing."
Mhm.
Now, the next words were the key phrase in this exchange. "But if you say so, I'll let the nets down again." And so, as the story continues, when Simon obeyed, they went back out. Their nets were filled with fish. They had to call another boat in to help them with the fish. And it says that both boats were on the verge of sinking because there were so many fish.
Mhm.
So when and I thought of that about that, when it comes to forgiving others, after considering all the reasons why we shouldn't,
Mhm.
after all, our all consuming thoughts of vindication,
Mhm.
after our arguments for self-defined justice,
Mhm.
and after our demand that they pay, all
Mhm.
God is wanting to hear us say is, if you say so,
If you say so.
but if you say so.
Yes.
And once it, I think once we do that, it's interesting because he says we worked hard. It was hard work last night. We
Mhm.
didn't catch a thing, right?
Right.
And it's hard work to carry unforgiveness.
Correct.
And like Simon's empty nets, before responding to Jesus' instructions,
Mhm.
there were no benefits. There are no benefits or no positive results from the hard work we do carrying unforgiveness.
Right. Right. There's no benefit.
No.
Right. Because you're not making the person that you're not forgiving, they could care less.
Yeah.
And this is even, when we're talking about, you know, things that may have happened to us in our families or, whatever.
Hmm.
If if the people, if they're not good anyway, or if they're not trying to follow Christ anyway,
Hmm.
they could care less about your forgiveness or your unforgiveness.
Hmm.
It's not going to stop them from doing, from moving through life the way that they do. It just stops you
Right. Right.
because you're so weighted down. And I think a lot of times if we look at if we're going through life and we have this overwhelming heaviness and we find ourselves in a place where sometimes we're closed off or alone or um sometimes we have to look at our life, look and see, is is there a bunch of unforgiveness that you have in your life? And what happens is when you don't forgive, it carries over into other relationships, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So because I don't forgive, maybe I have a friend that treated me wrong or whatever, and I don't forgive that person, I'm now going to treat you differently based on what someone else has done to me because I have this unforgiveness and I call myself trying to protect myself,
Hmm.
instead of allowing God to do that. And so now I put up a wall even between you and I, between our friendship, because of the stuff I'm carrying over from another relationship,
Hmm.
you know?
Right. Right. Yeah. You want to point out your scars, you know.
Right,
Yeah. Look at this. This is what happened.
right,
Yeah. Exactly.
right.
So, and
Right.
I
Or
think,
I'm like, you're not gonna give me another scar,
yeah, exactly.
And that's not even your intention,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah. When we forgive, we're releasing the empty nets, excuse
Uh-huh.
me, like Simon, the empty nets, try saying that
Right.
fast, of our heart and spirit, right?
Yes.
And
Uh-huh.
then God promises, if we do that, if we do exactly what he asks, forgive, he's going to fill us with liberty and freedom, just like he filled those nets with fish. And I
Mhm.
just that term that Simon used, or that response, can be in any facet of our lives. God has
Mhm.
asked us to do something, and all we have to do is say, if you say so,
Yep. Uh,
knowing that your
y
plan is not just to let's go back to forgiveness. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm going to forgive, and that you're doing that just to punish me, or
Right.
to scold me, or no, he's saying, you forgive,
Mhm.
and there's going to be a blessing that comes from that.
Yes.
And Simon could have stood on that shore and said, hey, Lord, listen, my guys are tired, I'm tired, I'll go out in the morning. He could have had
Right.
100 excuses. And
Right.
sometimes that's what we can do, and prolong that freedom, or that liberty that he wants to give us in that area, just because
Right.
I'm not ready yet, or
Right.
I'm tired, or I'll do it later.
Right.
So
Right.
if his promise is in this story, if his promise is, you do this
Mhm.
and you respond, and I promise you that there's going to be something of great benefit to you.
Correct.
And again, we can't go by what we see in the others that we're forgiving.
Correct.
There are people that I've had to forgive in my life,
Mhm.
that have no clue
Mhm.
that they've offended.
Right.
And you're thinking, as a reasonable person, a
Yes.
common sense person, you should
Yes.
get that. But
Right.
sometimes they don't. And sometimes they're not um, paying attention to the spirit. Maybe they're not even connected to the spirit of God.
Right.
Maybe they've ignored the spirit of God,
Right.
but that's their issue.
Mhm.
That's their thing that they're going to have to deal with God and
Right.
them, right?
Right.
So what all we can worry about is, what does God ask us to do?
Right.
You know, and if it's that, sometimes we make bigger issues out of, like, well, I saw somebody at church
Mhm.
invited so and so to lunch, but they didn't invite me.
Right.
So they must not like me, or they,
Right.
how dare they that they it's kind of like, you don't even know what the situation is.
Right.
Did
And I
this did this person have a desperate need to speak to someone
right.
in a private manner? So I think sometimes we can again, setting aside people that have had real harm in their lives, but just
Yes.
sometimes I think we can come up with reasons why we need to be offended by someone, and then not being willing to forgive.
Right. I think and it also keeps our focus on them instead of us focusing on us.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly running over in your mind what they've done or what they haven't done. And
Hmm.
it keeps us from focusing on us, on our on us. And then that's the other thing is that we have to have grace, just like we want others to have grace for us, just like God had grace for us. Sometimes we're offensive too. We could
Yeah.
be offensive just like other people can. And that may not be our intention, but you may have still been offensive, or they thought you were offensive. And
Right.
so, and I think when we stay in this place of unforgiveness and keeping our focus on what others have done to us or what others are doing to us, then we never look at ourselves.
Hmm.
And um I think I use this analogy in one of our other podcasts, but we're grading our own papers here,
Yeah.
grading
Yeah.
our own report. Of
Yeah.
course I'm gonna give myself A's, but
Yeah.
somebody that's not me may think I'm the most offensive. And I think that's what happens. I'm sorry, I didn't finish my thought. May think I'm the most offensive person. And when I think about people in my life that I have thought to be offensive, they don't think they're offensive,
Right. Right.
no.
Hmm.
So, again, I think it's important for us to try to um try to offer forgiveness as we want forgiveness,
Hmm.
because we're not perfect either. And there are things that I've done in my life that I regret, or I genuinely feel bad about.
Hmm.
And I would hope that other people would give me grace, so I need to be willing to to give other people grace. And that does not mean that I bring it up
Right.
every opportunity I get,
Yeah.
or even that I tell them, well, I forgave you of, okay, well, again, we're going back to square one.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's, you know, I think I shared in a podcast, I don't know if it was like in the Christmas episode or what it was, but one thing that the Lord just really prompted me on, and this person really didn't even know that there was something that had bothered me
Okay.
or had affected me. Let's just say that it affected me. It was a personal thing, and they
Okay.
didn't have a clue.
Mhm.
And so I realized I was angry over that they didn't get it. They didn't
Excuse me.
know, or they didn't, and the Lord just spoke to me and he says, I want you to forgive.
Mm.
And I think that really struck me because I thought of it as I was just angry. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? Sometimes we
Mhm.
don't think there's any unforgiveness involved.
Right, right. I agree. Mhm.
We're just irritated, or we're just, oh, they're bad manners, or that, but
Right.
we really have to look at it to see, is there unforgiveness where we won't, um, you know, I had an example, but I probably shouldn't share it. Where we're going to hold them to a standard that they're never going to
See, now I'm
get
curious.
past. What's that?
See, now I'm curious about the example. But if the Holy Spirit is saying don't share it, then don't share it. But I agree with you. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. So it just, again, it's just, if we want to walk in liberty and out of the heaviness, we have to be willing to obey.
Right.
And our obedience opens our heart to that miracle of peace and restoration that only he can provide.
Right.
And like we were saying in the last episode, wouldn't it be sad to get to the end of your life carrying all this weight when you realize, if I had just said, okay, Lord, if you say so,
Right.
you know, and it's like sometimes we just make it so much harder than it needs to be. And it's, I don't know, sometimes we play that story in our head.
We do.
Okay, so but I want this to happen, like you say, a payback. And I want
Mm.
to see this happen. And that would really teach them, then they'd know how. It's like, no, it's just got to be, I forgive
Right.
because you say so.
Right.
Right.
Excuse me, right. When
Right.
we're, when we're waiting, and sometimes I think, again, we think we forgive. And as soon as something bad happens to that person, we're
Yeah.
like, told you so.
Yeah.
Again, we haven't let go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Find all kind of reasons to justify our actions.
Right.
That's the thing. You know, our hurts, and there are some genuine hurts, and I get that.
Mhm.
But again, God did not say don't forgive in this instance or don't forgive in this instance. He just simply says we need to forgive. He'll handle the rest. And I know
Mhm.
that there are a lot of unfair situations that have happened to a lot of people, and there
Mhm.
are a lot of scenarios where great travesty was done to people.
Right.
But again, we have to let it go because we have to free ourselves, like you said, and live in liberty. And to be able to experience that, you have to forgive and let those things go and let God take care of them.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. So,
And
go ahead.
I was going to say, and why? Because he says so.
Because he says so. Yep. Yep. Luke 6:37 says, forgive and you will be forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
And so, God knows that forgiveness releases us. from being tethered to the
Yeah.
offense and
Yes.
the offender. And that's
Right.
why he asks. And
Right.
if you think about it, forgive and you will be forgiven. We are forgiven,
Hmm.
and that uh, releases us
Right.
from being tethered
Yes.
to Satan's desire. Again, we've said it so many times, to kill, steal, and destroy. And you
Yes.
think that if you cannot forgive, that you're not being tethered by the
Right.
enemy, then you're wrong,
Yes. Correct.
right?
Yep.
So his desire is to kill, steal, and destroy. And so if you cannot forgive,
Hmm.
he's winning the battle,
Right.
right?
Right. Because that's the thing. Every, and I think, and we have to keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Our fight is not against flesh and blood.
Right.
Everything that every, obstacle that we come across, it's a spiritual battle.
Right.
Satan is trying to literally take your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, we have to shift our mindset again to we have to fight in the spirit.
Right. Right. And it was interesting, just as you said that, I thought this, right. It's not a spiritual warfare. I
Mhm,
mean, it's not a human, it's spiritual warfare.
mhm.
The same thing that he's doing to you, he's doing to me. So when I look at somebody, I
Right,
can't just think, well, they're just a jerk because they're a jerk. It's like,
right,
no, the same uh, battle that is affecting me in the spirit is affecting
right, it's
others. And
right,
so if there's an offense, you can't, I don't think you can just look at it and go, well, the guy's a jerk. It's
right.
no, he is in a battle spiritually as well.
Mhm,
She is in a battle spiritually as well. So you're
right.
right. It is not a battle of flesh and blood, but of
Mhm,
the spirit. And that's if we can get into that mindset. And then,
mhm.
when God directs us, you know, here's what
Right,
I want you to do.
right,
We can tell him, hey, this isn't going to be easy, Lord. I'm really not happy that you're asking me this,
right.
but if you say so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep,
Yep.
you are
So
correct.
yeah, so again, it's a very short discussion on a
Yes,
big topic,
right.
but I think if we can keep these key points in mind, if he asks, just respond. And again, can't do it in our own strength because it's going to
Correct.
creep up. We're going to have to let the spirit actually. I always think of it as a root, right?
Mhm,
If a root grows down into a sidewalk,
mhm,
okay, and you got this weed that's coming out,
mhm,
you cut that weed off just at the sidewalk level,
mhm.
it's going to grow back,
That's right.
right? And you can do that again and again.
Yep,
You can keep cutting it off and cutting it off. But
yep.
what needs to happen is you need to root that out,
Right.
right? And
Right.
that's what the spirit of the Lord does. It
Yeah.
roots it out so
Mhm,
that there's room for other things to be placed in there.
mhm. Yep,
So,
yep.
yeah. So again, very short discussion on a very big topic,
Right,
but
right.
I do believe that through what was done at the resurrection, we are given that ability to walk with him
Right.
in victory over unforgiveness.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
we just have to excuse me. Guess my allergies are bothering me again a little bit.
Uh-oh.
Um, um, but you're right. We just have to do it. There's no way around it.
Mhm.
Again, think about the quality of life you want. You know,
Mhm.
it will, you cannot forgive, and you can still be walking with, you can still have Christ in your life, um and you can still, um Christ can still be walking alongside you. And I say that, um and when I say that, I'm saying, well, he's always walking alongside us. But what is the quality of life that you want? Do you just want to go through life being tied down
Mhm. Mm.
by, and again, it doesn't always start its head as like, I think sometimes we don't actually put our finger on it that it's unforgiveness.
Mhm.
But when you are constantly saying, what someone is doing to you or has done to you, or what others are doing to you or have done to you, and you're at a place where you're not going to do anything for anyone,
Mhm.
need to look at that and really look and see what that is about.
Mhm.
Because I'm pretty sure if you look closely, there's some unforgiveness in there.
Mhm. Right. Right.
So,
Yeah. And it's yeah, heavy weight to bear, and it's like the empty fishing nets,
yes.
It's like how discouraging that
Mhm.
is day after day, that you've got this empty net because you won't
Mhm.
um do as the Lord has instructed us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yes.
all
I'm only
right.
one close today.
What you do what?
I'm only gonna have one close today.
Okay, okay. That'll make your mom happy.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so just going back real quick, Luke 5,
Hmm.
chapter 5 is where that story is found if somebody wants to just look it up. Luke 5, 1 through 5, and just follow up with just the heart of Simon in his you know exchange with the Lord. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
So all right. Well, here we
So
go. One more in the books, huh?
one more in the books.
All right. Well,
Until next time,
until next time, you take care.
you too, Renee.
Okay. We'll see you.
Hopefully, my allergies will be much, much better by the next time we meet.
Yeah, watch, and then I'll be having my problems next
Right,
time.
right, right.
All right. Well, you take care, and we will talk
Okay,
soon.
you too, Renee.
All
Talk to
right.
you soon.
Okay. Bye.